My name is Elena Voss, and for 31 years, I worked nights on hospital wards where people went to die. Not the wards where people got better and went home to their families. The other ones. The ones with the low lighting and the extra chairs and the box of tissues that somebody always remembered to refill. I was good at it. Not because I had some gift. Not because I could see anything the doctors couldn't. But because I learned early that dying people don't need answers. They need somebody to sit close, keep their hand warm, and not flinch when the room gets quiet, in a way that isn't peaceful exactly, but isn't afraid either. I held 400 hands, maybe more. I stopped counting around year 20. 10 years ago, on a Tuesday, my own heart stopped in my kitchen while I was rinsing a coffee cup. My son found me on the floor and did compressions until the paramedics took over. I was gone for almost 4 minutes. I don't talk about what that was like, because there aren't words that don't sound foolish coming out of a 62-year-old woman's mouth. But I will say this much, I wasn't scared. Something was waiting on the other side of that quiet, and it wasn't unkind. When they got my heart going again, I came back angry for exactly 1 week, because I understood, for the first time in my career, what all my patients had been walking toward. After that, I went quiet about it and went back to work, because that's what you do. I retired from the hospital 4 years ago. My knees gave out before my nerve did. I took the overnight security and conservation post at the Kestrel Hollow Museum of Natural Antiquities, because the pay was decent, the building was warm, and nobody there needed me to hold their hand while they died. Or so I thought, until the crate came up from the Tavik Ridge dig in November. It didn't look like much under the tarp. A case the length of a tall man, black as a river stone, without a seam anywhere on its surface that any of the university's people could find. No hinge, no latch, no scratch from 300,000 years of permafrost pressing on it. The geologists dated the ice around it before they dated the object itself, because the object itself refused to be dated at all. Every scan came back wrong in a different way. The chemists couldn't name the material. The physicist from the Capitol ran a scope over it for 6 hours and left without saying goodbye to anyone. In the end, the board declared it inert, a beautiful, unexplainable dead thing, and moved it to Display Room C to wait quietly for a grant that would let someone smarter than all of us try again. I was the one who mopped that room every night. I was the one who turned off the lights. The museum director, a nervous young man named Petrosian, who had never once looked me in the eye in 4 years, gave a little speech at the unveiling about a monument to the limits of human knowledge. He meant it as praise for the object. I heard it, standing at the back near the fire exit in my gray uniform, and thought instead of every family I'd ever sat with who reached the same limit from the other direction, the limit of what medicine could do, the limit of what any of us could hold on to. I have never trusted a room full of experts declaring anything simply dead. I spent 3 decades watching machines say the same thing about people who weren't finished yet. The first week, I didn't think much of it. It sat behind its rope line under the glass roof, black and silent, the museum's newest mystery, no different to me than the mummified ibis 2 rooms over. But on the 9th night, doing my last walkthrough, I noticed the air near it was colder than it should have been, the way a hospital room gets colder in the last hour. I'd felt that particular cold enough times to recognize it in my bones before my mind caught up. So I did the only thing I know how to do with cold like that. I pulled a folding chair up to the rope line, past the little brass sign that said, "Do not cross," and I sat down next to it the way I used to sit next to my patients when the family had gone home to sleep and somebody still needed to stay. I didn't say anything smart. I never did, with the dying. I said, I know this part, the waiting part. It's the worst part, and nobody tells you that going in. I hummed, low, the same tuneless little hum I used to hum on the ward at 3 in the morning. More breath than melody, just enough sound in the room that a person, or whatever this was, didn't have to be alone with the silence. I did that for 6 nights running. Nobody at the museum knew. I told myself I was being sentimental in my old age, humming to a rock because it reminded me of easier work than the work I used to do. On the seventh night, the frost on the inside of the case's black surface, frost I hadn't even known was there, hidden under some coating that made the material look dry, began to clear. Not shatter, not crack open with a dramatic groan, the way you'd expect from something in a story. It cleared the way a window clears when a warm hand rests flat against cold glass from the other side. Slow, deliberate, like breath fogging and then thinning. I should have called someone, I know that. I sat there instead, hands folded in my lap, and said, "There you are." The exact 3 words I'd said to more dying strangers than I could count. The words that mean, I see you, and you are not alone in this, whichever direction you're headed. The clearing spread along a seam that hadn't existed an hour before. A thin line of warm amber light tracing the lid's edge. Not violent, not blinding, just steady, like a coal catching. The room's temperature climbed a few degrees. Somewhere under the museum's climate control, an alarm I never heard went off and was quietly overridden, because whatever oversaw that building's old bones understood, the way I understood, that this was not an emergency. This was an arrival. The lid didn't fly open. It exhaled. A slow column of pale mist lifted off the surface and hung in the display lights, and beneath it, the black material had gone the deep, warm color of old honey, glowing from within, like a lamp behind a curtain. I did not see a face. I did not see hands reach for me. What I saw, forming along the inside curve of the glass in lines of that same honeyed light, were characters I didn't recognize, sharp, layered, foreign, and then, impossibly, gently, they simplified. They softened at the edges, the way ice softens near a stove. And they became letters I did know, drawn out slow and careful, like someone learning to write again after a long illness. Elena. I put my hand over my mouth. I had never told this building my name. My badge said E. Voss. Nobody here called me anything but Elena to my face, maybe twice a week, in passing. The light steadied, held a moment, the way a person holds a breath before they say the thing that matters most, and then the rest of it came, letter by letter, warm and unhurried. You cross too. I have thought about those 3 words every day since, and I still don't have a tidy explanation for what was inside that case, what civilization built it, or how long it had been waiting in the dark under the ice for someone to sit close enough and quiet enough to be recognized. I don't think it needed a queen. I don't think it was looking for a bloodline or a hero or anyone's chosen one. I think, and this is only a night nurse's theory, offered for whatever it's worth, that whatever crossed over inside that vault had gone to the same place I had gone 10 years ago, rinsing a coffee cup, and had come back the same way I had, quietly, and forever changed by having seen the other side of the door and found it wasn't cruel. It didn't need my name to mean king, or maker, or heir. It only needed to say the name of someone who had been where it had been, and lived to say so. My palm has carried a faint warmth ever since, right where I laid my hand flat against the glass that night, a warmth no doctor can find a cause for, and no scan will ever explain. I still work the overnight shift. I still make my rounds through display room C last, out of habit, though the case sits dark and quiet again behind its rope line, waiting, I think, for nothing more now than good company. I spent 31 years walking people to the door when their time came. It took something 300,000 years old, from further away than I will ever have the language to describe, to remind me that once, on an ordinary Tuesday, I had already walked through it myself, and that somewhere in the dark, something had been standing on the other side, keeping my seat warm, waiting all this time for me to come back and say hello.